Hey guys, tonight we plunge into the sweaty, sun-scorched heart of ancient Rome, where the air hums with the clash of swords and the roar of a bloodthirsty crowd. You're standing in the Colosseum's shadow, dust clinging to your sandals as gladiators bronzed, scarred, and glistening battle for glory. The Romans around you aren't just cheering for victory, they're lusting after something stranger. The warriors' sweat bottled and sold as a love potion. You probably won't survive this bizarre obsession without raising an eyebrow. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. You're swept into Rome's feverish world, where gladiator sweat isn't just a quirky fad, it's a cultural phenomenon. Picture yourself weaving through a packed forum, merchants hawking vials of warrior essence like it's the elixir of Venus herself. Why the obsession? Romans believed this sweat, scraped from the skin of arena heroes, could spark passion and virility. It's not just a myth. Historical records, like those from Pliny the Elder, confirm that gladiator sweat was prized as a medical and romantic tonic. The stuff was so revered, it was mixed into drinks or dabbed on skin like a high-end perfume. Historians still argue whether this was widespread or just an elite quirk, with some saying it was more about status than actual results. Either way, you're starting to see the Romans' wild side. You pause, catching the scent of olive oil and leather in the air as a vendor waves a clay vial under your nose. Pure gladiator sweat, he bellows, claiming it's from a Thracian who slew 3 men last week. The crowd surges, coins clinking, eyes gleaming with hope. To them, this isn't just sweat, it's liquid courage for love. Gladiators, after all, were the rock stars of their day, their bodies radiating strength and survival. Every drop of their perspiration carried the promise of invincibility, a spark of the divine. You can't help but smirk. Would you shell out for a vial of this stuff? Or is it just too gross to consider? The craze wasn't born in a vacuum. Rome's a city of extra-mess, lavish banquets, brutal executions, and a deep obsession with physical prowess. Gladiators embodied the ideal man, fearless, chiseled, and defying death. Their sweat, to the Romans, was a byproduct of that raw power, a tangible piece of their heroism. You glance at a matron clutching her vial, her cheeks flushed. She's not just buying sweat, she's buying a dream of passion, a chance to channel the arena's fire into her own life. It's absurd, sure, but there's something human about it, chasing magic in a chaotic world. Before you move deeper into this sweaty saga, take a breath. The forum's dizzying, with hawkers shouting and chariots rattling by. You're starting to get why this fad took hold, but there's more to uncover. How did gladiators become such heartthrobs? And what made their sweat the ultimate aphrodisiac? For now, you're just a curious traveler, dodging pickpockets and wondering if Rome's gone mad or if they're onto something. You're back in the pulsing heart of Rome, the Colosseum looming like a stone giant as you squint against the midday glare. The crowd's roar shakes the ground, and there in the arena, a gladiator, let's call him Marcus, dodges a trident's jab, his bare chest slick with sweat. You can't tear your eyes away, and neither can the thousands around you, their cheers laced with something primal. It's not just his survival they're betting on. It's his raw, sweat-soaked allure that's got them hooked, fueling Rome's wild obsession with gladiator sweat as the ultimate aphrodisiac. Picture Marcus, scarred, sun-bronzed, muscles rippling as he parries a blow. To the Romans, he's not just a fighter, he's a walking god, a blend of Mars and Adonis. Historical accounts, like those from Suetonius, tell us gladiators were idolized, their images plastered on tavern walls, and their names whispered in bedrooms. Their sweat, dripping from these living legends, was seen as a potion of potency, a spark for passion in a city obsessed with power. You nudge through the stands, catching snippets of gossip. A senator's wife paid a fortune for a vial of Marcus's sweat, swearing it rekindled her husband's fire. You roll your eyes. Really, lady? Here's where it gets quirkier. Some Romans believed gladiator sweat could double as a charm against evil spirits, not just a love potion. They'd dab it behind their ears before a big date or a dice game, thinking it carried the fighter's luck. It's the kind of superstition that makes you chuck Limogene splashing on some sweaty cologne to ward off bad vibes. Historians still argue whether this was a genuine belief or just clever marketing by arena vendors, inflating the sweat's mystique to raking ordinary. You lean closer to the arena's edge, dust coating your tunic, as Marcus lands a blow, his opponent staggering. The crowd erupts, and you notice something. The women, young and old, aren't just cheering, they're swooning. Gladiators weren't just athletes, they were sex symbols, their every move charged with erotic undertones. Their sweat, to these fans, was a bottled piece of that charisma, a way to steal a spark of their untamed energy. You can't help but grin. Would you be screaming for Marcus too? Or is this all a bit much? The sun beats down and you wipe your own brow, wondering how this craze took such deep root. Rome's a city of spectacle, where strength equals status, and gladiators are the ultimate trophy. Their sweat isn't just a bodily fluid, it's a symbol of victory, virility, and defiance of death. You catch a whiff of liniment and blood from the arena, mixed with the crowd's fervor. It's heady, almost intoxicating, and you get why someone might believe this stuff could ignite passion. Almost, but there's a darker edge. Not all gladiators are free men like Marcus. Many are slaves, their sweat harvested without consent, their bodies commodified. You frown, watching a handler scrape Marcus's arm with a strigil, collecting his perspiration in a small jar. The crowd doesn't care about the ethics, they want the magic. You're starting to see the gladiator's allure, but you're curious. Why did Romans think this sweat was divine, and how did they turn it into a sacred elixir? For now, you're just a spectator, caught in the arena's spell, wondering where this sweaty trail leads next. You're still in Rome's sweltering grip, the Colosseum's roar fading as you slip into a quieter corner of the city, a dimly lit apothecary tucked behind the forum. Shelves grown with clay jars, labeled with promises of love and vigor. But one item steals the show: vials of gladiator sweat, glinting like liquid gold in the lamplight. You're here to uncover why Romans didn't just want this stuff, they revered it as a sacred elixir, a divine key to passion that made hearts race and marriages reignite. It's weird, sure, but there's a strange logic to it. Imagine the scene: a wealthy matron, draped in silk, slips a vial from her purse, dabbing sweat behind her ears before a banquet. To her, this isn't just a beauty trick, it's a ritual, a bridge to the gods. Historical texts, like those from Galen, note that Romans saw gladiators as touched by divine favor, their survival in the arena proof of celestial blessing. Their sweat, then, wasn't mere perspiration, it was a holy essence, infused with the strength of Mars and the allure of Venus. You smirk, thinking of modern energy drinks claiming to unleash your inner beast. Same vibe, just sweatier. Now for the oddball tidbit: some Romans mixed gladiator sweat with crushed rose petals and myrrh, believing the combo amplified its aphrodisiac powers like a love potion smoothie. It's the kind of recipe that makes you gag, but back then, it was high-end alchemy. Historians still argue whether this was a genuine spiritual practice or just a fad for the elite, showing off their wealth with exotic concoctions. Did they really believe in the divine spark, or was it all about flexing status? You're not sure, but the matron's dreamy smile suggests she's sold. You lean against the apothecary counter, catching a whiff of herbs and something muskier, probably that sweat. The vendor, a weary man with a sly grin, spins tales of gladiators whose sweat could make barren women fertile or timid men bold. It's half sales pitch, half mythology, and the crowd eats it up. To Romans, the arena was a sacred space, where blood and sweat mingled with the will of the gods. Gladiators, defying death, were seen as conduits of divine energy, their bodies producing a substance that could transfer that power to mortals. You raise an eyebrow. Will you buy into this hype? Or is it just ancient snake oil? The belief runs deeper than superstition. Rome's a city obsessed with potenza, military, political, romantic. A gladiator's sweat, born from the crucible of combat, symbolized the ultimate vitality. You glance at a young man clutching a vial, his eyes bright with hope. Maybe he's wooing a crush, maybe he's desperate to impress his bride. Either way, he believes this sweat holds the key to his desires. It's absurd, but there's a poetry to witnessing divinity in a drop of human effort. You can't help but chuckle imagining pitching this on a modern dating app. As you step back into the bustling street, the city's pulse hits you. Chariots clatter, hawkers shout, and somewhere, a gladiator's sweat is changing someone's life, or so they think. You're starting to grasp why this elixir felt sacred, but how did they even get it? The process of harvesting this warrior's essence sounds grimy, and you're curious to see it up close. For now, you're just a traveler, dodging carts and wondering if Rome's divine obsession is genius or madness. You're trudging through Rome's backstreets now, the Colosseum's din a distant rumble as you follow a narrow alley reeking of liniment and leather. You're headed to a gritty, sweat-soaked world behind the arena, where the real hustle happens, the harvesting of gladiator sweat, that bizarre aphrodisiac Romans can't get enough of. It's not glamorous. Imagine a locker room crossed with a butcher's shop, all grime and hustle. You're about to see how a warrior's perspiration goes from skin to vial, turning battle-hardened grit into liquid lust for a city obsessed. Picture the scene: a gladiator, let's call him Lucius, staggers off the sand, chest heaving, blood and sweat streaking his skin. Before he can collapse, a handler, think shady entrepreneur with a bronze scraper, swoops in, wielding a strigil, that curved tool Romans used to scrape oil and sweat from their bodies. Historical records, like those from Celsus, describe strigils as everyday bathhouse gear, but in the arena, they're the key to capturing a gladiator's essence. The handler scrapes Lucius's arms and torso, collecting a slick mix of sweat, oil, and arena dust into a clay jar. You wince a gross, but to Romans, it's gold. Here's the quirky bit. Some handlers swore by freshness charms, whispering incantations over the jars to preserve the warrior's vigor. It's the kind of woo-woo nonsense that makes you snort. Imagine a used car salesman blessing a lemon to keep it zippy. Historians still argue whether these rituals were genuine beliefs or just theatrics to jack up prices, with some suggesting it was a way to make the sweat seem more mystical. Either way, the buyers lapped it up, convinced they were getting pure, untainted passion. You hover near the handler, the air thick with the tang of sweat and metal. He's quick, scraping with practiced flicks, careful not to waste a drop. The gladiator barely notices, too exhausted to care that his perspiration is about to be bottled and sold. You spot a line of jars, each labeled with the fighter's name and feats. Lucius, slayer of the Gaul. Its marketing genius. Every vial tells a story, making buyers feel like they're stealing a piece of heroism. You can't help but grin. Would you fall for this branding, or is it too slimy for you? The process isn't just physical, it's a business. Handlers work fast, rushing jars to apothecaries before the sweat loses its potency. A claim with zero science, but plenty of hype. Some mix it with wine or herbs to stretch the supply, though purists insist on raw sweat for maximum effect. You glance at a nearby stall where a vendor hawks these jars, his pitch drowned out by a passing cart. The crowd doesn't care about the grime, they want the magic. It's a stark reminder. Many gladiators are slaves, their bodies exploited even after the fight. You frown. Rome's romance with sweat has a dark underbelly. As you step away, the alley's clamor fades, but the image sticks. A gladiator's hard-won sweat, scraped and sold like a commodity. You're starting to see how this craze fuels a whole economy. But what happens when that sweat hits the market? The bustle of Rome's aphrodisiac trade is calling, and you're curious to dive into the frenzy. For now, you're just a bystander, brushing dust off your tunic, wondering if this sweaty hustle is brilliance or insanity. You're weaving through Rome's bustling forum now, the air thick with the scent of roasted meat, incense, and something muskier. Gladiator sweat, the city's hottest aphrodisiac, fueling a market that's equal parts carnival and chaos. Stalls line the cobblestones, vendors shouting over each other, waving vials that promise to ignite passion. and transform love lives. You're diving into the heart of this sweaty trade, where Rome's obsession with gladiator essence turns dreams of romance into a thriving, slightly shady business. It's loud, it's wild, and you're right in the middle of it. Imagine the scene: a merchant, all toothy grin and sweaty brow, holds up a clay jar labeled Titus, Lion Vanquisher. He claims one drop will make anyone irresistible, and the crowd, merchants, matrons, even a few shy teens, press his closer, coins jingling. Historical records, like those from juvenile satires, paint the forum as a hub for such exotic goods, with gladiator sweat fetching prices that could buy a decent horse. It's not just a product, it's a status symbol, a bottled piece of arena glory for anyone chasing love or lust. You smirk. Sounds like Rome's version of a pricey dating app subscription. Here's the weird twist: some vendors sold sweat blends, mixing gladiator perspiration with peacock feathers or crushed seashells, claiming it boosted the aphrodisiac effect. It's the kind of gimmick that makes you chuck limousine in a modern smoothie bar, tossing in glitter for extra vibes. Historians still argue whether these blends were genuine attempts at alchemy or just scams to pad profits, with some suggesting the additives were purely for show. Whatever the truth, buyers didn't blink, snapping up these quirky concoctions like they were the key to eternal passion. You pause at a stall, dodging a cart piled with amphorae, as the vendor spins a tale about Titus's sweat being harvested under a full moon for maximum potency. The crowd eats it up, but you notice a few skeptics rolling their eyes. The market's a mix of faith and frenzy. Some buy for love, others for clout, flashing their vials like designer handbags. You spot a young woman tucking her purchase into her tunic, her cheeks flushed with hope. Maybe she's dreaming of a suitor, maybe just a spark in her marriage. It's oddly touching, even if the whole scene feels like a fever dream. The trade's not just about romance, it's big business. Sweat moves fast, from arena handlers to apothecaries to these shouting merchants, each taking a cut. Some stalls even offer discount sweat from lesser-known gladiators, though whispers of fakes big sweat anyone float through the crowd. You raise an eyebrow. Will you risk a knockoff vial, or is the real deal worth the splurge? The market's energy is infectious, but there's a darker edge. The gladiators, often slaves, see none of this profit. Their bodies just another commodity in Rome's endless hustle. As you step back, the forum's chaos swirls around yokers, pickpockets, and the clink of coins. You're starting to see how gladiator sweat became Rome's must-have, but does it actually work? The line between science and superstition is blurry, and you're curious to dig into whether this sweaty craze had any real power, if it was all just hype. For now, you're just a traveler brushing past a spice stall, wondering if Rome's love for sweat is genius or pure madness. You're lingering in Rome's fading daylight, the forum's clamor softening as you slip into a quieter moment, your mind buzzing with questions. The vials of gladiator sweat, peddled as love's ultimate spark, have you wondering, does this stuff actually work, or is it just ancient hype? You're peeling back the layers of Rome's sweaty obsession, diving into the murky line between science and superstition. Was gladiator sweat a genuine aphrodisiac, or were Romans just chasing a myth, seduced by the arena's raw lure? Let's poke at the truth, or at least what passes for in this dusty city. Picture yourself in a Roman bathhouse, steam curling around you, as a philosopher-type drones on about the vital energies in gladiator sweat. He's convinced it's science, sort of. Historical records, like those from Pliny the Elder, suggest Romans believed sweat carried a person's essence, especially from gladiators, whose survival proved their vigor. They thought dabbing it on could transfer that strength, maybe even boost libido. It's not total nonsense. Sweat contains pheromones, and modern science hints at their subtle role in attraction. But a love potion, you smirk, sounds like a stretch, even for a city that loves its myths. Now for the quirky bit. Some Romans claimed gladiator sweat worked best if applied during specific lunar phases, like a waxing moon for growing desire. It's the kind of astrology meets sweat logic that makes you chuckle. Imagine a Tinder bio demanding must apply cologne at crescent moon. Historians still argue whether this was a serious belief or just poetic flair to make the sweat seem mystical, with some leaning toward it being a cultural quirk rather than hard science. Either way, it added to the sweat's allure, keeping buyers hooked. You lean against a bathhouse column, the air heavy with eucalyptus and cheddar. The philosopher's still yammering, but you're skeptical. Could sweat really ignite passion? Or was it all placebo? Romans weren't dumb, they built aqueducts, after all, but they loved their superstitions. The arena's drama, the gladiator's godlike aura probably amplified the sweat's appeal. You picture a matron, heart racing as she dabs on her vial, convinced it's working. Maybe it's the belief, not the sweat, that's doing the heavy lifting. You can't help but grin. Would you try it just to see, or is this too weird even for you? The science angle is shaky, but the psychology's solid. Gladiators were Rome's alpha males, their sweat a symbol of power in a city obsessed with dominance. That alone could make someone feel bolder, sexier, like wearing a lucky charm. But there's a catch. Not all sweat was equal. Buyers swore by fresh sweat from victorious gladiators, claiming older or looser sweat was useless. It's a marketing scam wrapped in superstition, and you're starting to see why this craze thrived. Hope is a powerful drug. As you step out, the cool evening air hits you, carrying the distant roar of the Colosseum. You're piecing together the puzzle. Gladiator sweat might not be a magic bullet, but its grip on Rome's imagination is undeniable. Now you're curious how this fad played out across the cities. Do the destined the elite and commoners chase it the same way? The sweaty saga is not over, and you're ready to see who else fell under its spell. For now, you're just a skeptic, strolling through Rome, wondering if faith and sweat was enough to make hearts race. You're back in Rome's vibrant streets, the evening air buzzing with the clink of wine cups and the murmur of gossip. The gladiator sweat craze has you hooked, and now you're tracing its reach across the city's diva desolate and commoner alike, united in their lust for this bizarre aphrodisiac. From marble villas to cramped tenements, the allure of warrior essence crosses class lines, turning Rome into a sweaty, love-struck melting pot. You're about to see how this odd obsession bound the city together, even if it meant different things to different wallets. Picture a lavish banquet in a senator's villa, all silk cushions and golden goblets. The hostess, draped in jewels, casually mentions her latest purchase, a vial of sweat from a champion Murmillo, costlier than her pearl earrings. She swears it's the secret to her husband's renewed ardor. Historical accounts, like those from Tacitus, confirm that Rome's elite splurged on gladiator sweat, using it to signal wealth and sophistication. It wasn't just about passion, it was about flexing status, like flaunting a designer label. You smirk. Sounds like Rome's version of a private jet, but stickier. Now for the quirky twist. Some commoners, unable to afford pure sweat, bought arena dust scraped from the Colosseum floor, believing it carried traces of gladiator magic. It's the kind of budget workaround that makes you chuckle. Imagine settling for knockoff perfume and calling it couture. Historians still argue whether this was genuine faith in the dust's power or just desperation to join the trend, with some suggesting it was a way for the poor to feel connected to Rome's glamorous obsession. Either way, it kept the sweat craze alive across the social spectrum. You slip into a crowded tavern, the air thick with sweat and cheap wine, where laborers swap stories about their own vials. A baker brags about splashing some Riviera sweat before wooing his sweetheart, claiming it sealed the deal. The crowd laughs, but their eyes gleam with the same hope you saw in the villa. Elite or not, Romans shared a belief. Gladiator sweat was a shortcut to desire, a spark of the arena's fire. You can't help but grin. Would you join the hype? Or is this obsession just too sweaty for you? The unity is striking, but not perfect. The elite bought their sweat fresh from top-tier gladiators, while commoners often settle for diluted blends or fake, sometimes just salted water with a fancy label. Yet the dream was the same, a taste of power, a boost of confidence. You spot a street vendor hawking guaranteed sweat, his pitch drowned out by a passing chariot. The crowd doesn't care about authenticity. They want the fantasy. It's a rare moment where Rome's rigid class lines blur, all chasing the same bottled myth. There's a darker note, though. Gladiators, often slaves, fuel this frenzy, their bodies exploited for profit they'll never see. You frown, watching a young man clutch his vial like a talisman. He's chasing love, but at what cost? The sweat trade binds Rome's classes, but it's built on a grim reality. As you weave through the tavern's haze, you're starting to wonder why this fad ever faded. The city's changing, and the sweat's grip might be loosening. For now, you're just a traveler, dodging drunks and dreaming of answers. You're wandering Rome's twilight streets now, the city's pulse slowing as torches flicker and the distant Colosseum falls silent. The gladiator sweat craze, once a feverish obsession, is starting to feel like a fading echo. You're tracing the decline of this strange fad, unraveling why Rome's love for warrior essence lost its spark as the empire shifted. From bustling markets to elite banquets, the vials that once promised passion are gathering dust. You're diving into the final chapter of this sweaty saga, piecing together what snuffed out the city's bizarre aphrodisiac dream. Picture the scene, a vendor in the forum, his stall quieter than it was months ago, hawks gladiator sweat with less conviction. Buyers pass by, their eyes drifting to new trinkets, Egyptian amulets, perhaps, or spiced wine from Gaul. Historical records, like those from Cassius Dio, suggest that as Rome's empire expanded in the later centuries, cultural tastes shifted. Gladiatorial games, while still popular, faced growing competition from chariot races and theater, diluting the gladiators' godlike aura. Their sweat, once a symbol of raw power, started feeling ordinary. You smirk, imagine a celebrity cologne losing hype when the star's fame dips. Here's the quirky bit. Some diehards tried reviving the trend by mixing sweat with exotic imports, like saffron or Indian pepper, claiming it modernized the potion. It's the kind of desperate rebrand that makes you chuckle. Think of a failing soda company launching artisanal flavors. Historians still argue whether these tweaks were genuine attempts to save the fad or just last-ditch scans, with some pointing to changing religious attitudes. Early Christianity's rise frowned on pagan-tinged rituals like sweat worship as a bigger factor. Either way, the magic was slipping. You paused by a crumbling fountain, the air cool and tinged with olive oil from a nearby stall. The vendor's voice fades into the night, and you can feel Rome changing. The empire's growing, its borders stretching, its people dazzled by new gods and ideas. Gladiators, once the ultimate icons, are becoming just another spectacle. Their sweat less divine, more commodity. You spot a discarded vial in the gutter. It's clay-chipped. It's a small thing, but it hits you. The city's moving on, chasing new dreams. You can't help but grin. Would you cling to the sweat trend, or are you ready for Rome's next obsession? The decline wasn't sudden. Economic shifts played a role. Gladiator shows were pricey, and as Rome's coffers strained, the sweat trade took a hit. Plus, the rise of moralizing voices, like Stoic philosophers, mocked the decadence of aphrodisiac fads. You picture a toga-clad scholar sneering at a matron's vial, calling it fool's perfume. Yet, for a while, the sweat lingered in Rome's heart, a stubborn reminder of a wilder, lustier era. It's oddly poignant, this slow fade of a fad that once set the city ablaze. As you linger by the fountain, the stars emerge, soft and steady. You're starting to see why the sweat craze couldn't last. Rome's too restless, too hungry for the next big thing. The gladiators still fight, the markets still hum, but the vials are fewer, the shouts quieter. You take a slow breath, letting the city's rhythm wrap around you. It's time to wind down, to let this strange tale settle like dust on the cobblestones. The night deepens, and Rome's edges soften, its clamor fading into a gentle hum. You're strolling now, sandals whispering on stone, the weight of the day lifting. The gladiator sweat, the feverish markets, the dreams of passion are just stories now drifting like smoke. You imagine a Roman, centuries ago, tucking a vial away, smiling at a memory of wilder days. It's okay to let go. The city sleeps, and so should you. Feel your shoulders ease, your thoughts blur into starlight. Close your eyes, let the ancient streets fade. Rest now. Sweet dreams.